Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of our topic called the Kaaba problem. And of course, this is part three of this particular series that we've been doing with the apostate prophet. And last time we talked about the problems with the historicity of Mecca, and of course, in this case, the Kaaba itself, since if Mecca was such a prominent city, then a lot of the historical events around that area would have encompassed Mecca, like, for instance, the Romans' occupations or at least invasions for the northern part of the Arabian Peninsula, never really include Mecca, even though they were so close to that area. But if it was a prominent city, most likely they would have made their way all the way to Mecca, especially when we hear that it was a commerce center. I mean, the Romans would have been salivating over that because that means a lot of money for them from taxation, but yet they did not do such a thing at all. That indicates to us that Mecca either didn't exist at that time or wasn't even a prominent city. Even many of the earlier maps did not have Mecca on their radar. So all of these evidence indicates something related to Mecca and the Kaaba in this case. Maybe the Kaaba was there, but it doesn't look like it was a prominent place for people to do their religious visitations and so on and so forth. Well, today's show is no exception. We're going to talk about now the connection or the alleged connection between the Kaaba, Mecca, and Abraham, or the Abrahamic religion all together. Of course, as I stated, with us here virtually in our studios, our friend, the apostate prophet. AP, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for the research that you're doing and for all these excellent points that you have raised in the last two episodes of this particular series. But I want to turn it over to you to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Al. I'm really happy to be back here. We want to dive in back into analyzing the connections, the alleged connections between the Kaaba and history, and especially Abrahamic history. We talked about how if the Islamic narrative about the Kaaba was true, then we should find some historical traces about this. We want to apply some similar logic and more to also understand one more thing, which is if the Islamic narrative about the Kaaba and about Mecca was true, then we would definitely find traces about this, not just traces. We would find the Kaaba and Mecca as a place and an object of huge importance within Abrahamic tradition, Abrahamic scripture, and Abrahamic history. Unfortunately, we don't. I want to start this with the entire narrative about Abraham. As said, the Islamic claim is that Abraham built the Kaaba and upon the instructions of Allah, and he was told to invite mankind to the Kaaba, and people would come from all kinds of distant passes. If this were true, let's just apply some reasoning to come to the most reasonable explanation. If this were true, then we would expect Abraham to have a big connection to the Kaaba, and we would expect the tradition that comes from Abraham, that descends from Abraham, to also highly value the Kaaba. Mm-hmm. Well, we find Abraham within the Bible. We find his history, his tradition there. And to a great extent, Islam actually originally respects the Hebrew tradition, the biblical tradition which descends from Abraham, because, as we know, Islam makes references to all the Israelites, the biblical prophets, and tells us about how they were rightly guided prophets of Allah, and the scriptures were sent by him. It doesn't give us a separate history. It relies on the history of the biblical tradition. And in that history, we find that Abraham, the figure, as it is described in the early history of the Bible, had nothing to do with the region of Arabia, central or southern Arabia. His journey was completely spent far up in the north, with lands that have nothing to do with Arabia. And there is no mention of him ever building a place that he would invite all mankind to, and that people would, go to pilgrimage to and sacrifice animals and all that. Right. We do not find such a connection at all. Now, some Muslims want to bring the objection that we do actually find something. But before we get to that, again, to point out, if the Islamic narrative was true, Christians and Jews would highly value the Kaaba, and they would have some connection to it over history. It wouldn't just be slightly mentioned, maybe. It would be of great importance, and Muslims and Jews and Christians would know about the Kaaba and would travel there. But nobody even knew what a Kaaba is until Islam started to rise and expand. If we look at the Bible, Muslims make certain claims, which are one of them is that Abraham did build an altar, a temple, according to the Bible. But this is a very ignorant stance, in fact, because in the biblical tradition, it is known that Abraham built several altars.
That's right.
In fact, there is a narrative of a very significant narrative of the 4 altars of Abraham, which he built. And if we look at the 4 altars of Abraham, they have a specific purpose, and they also have specific locations that are all around the region of Jerusalem and the northern parts of this of the Middle East. There is nothing that is remotely related to the Kaaba, let alone a place of huge significance.
Right.
There is one issue which Muslims like to bring up, which is that there is apparently a place called the Valley of Baqa, or the Valley of Bakka, in the Bible. And they say this must be referring to Mecca, and it also mentions a house of God there. This must be referring to the Kaaba. But this is also entirely false. Did you want to add something? Or?
No. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, everything you're saying is just very powerful.
Thank you. Well, if we look at this entire claim about the Valley of Becca, we find that this claim of this objection it comes from a place of great ignorance or of deception and self-deception. Because if we look into the Bible and this supposed Valley of Becca, which is supposed to be corresponding with Mecca, we do find a mention of something called Valley of Becca, but this is a place of complete insignificance, or maybe a place that doesn't even exist, maybe a place that is mentioned for metaphorical reasons, for the narrative. Mm-hmm. It is mentioned in Psalms 84, where it says, where it describes from the perspective of an author of the Psalms, known as one of the sons of Korah, and he describes his longing for Zion, for Jerusalem, for the temple, for the house of God, and he describes the beautiful emotions and feelings that you feel when you go to Zion before you appear before the house of God. And it says about the pilgrims who travel to Zion, it says, when they pass through the valley of Baqa, they make it a place of springs. This is a very lyrical, a very metaphorical explanation of this is a place of weeping. The word literally translates to weeping, or to a specific tree known for weeping. And people with joy, when they go to Jerusalem, make this place a place of joy instead of hardship. The funny thing is, when you read the Hebrew text, this place, Valley of Baqa, is not called Baqa or Becca. It is actually called Baqa, which does not even sound similar to Mecca, and or to Becca, as Muslims want to make it. It is Baqa. The word Baqa is also mentioned in a different part in the Bible, in 2 Samuel, where it just describes simply a place where it describes trees during a fight, something of complete insignificance. And it is not a place that is the focus of attention, the focus of worship, the center of worship. It is merely a place that plays no further significance, but they use it to just because it seems to sound similar to Mecca, in order to make the assertion that the Kaaba and that Mecca are indeed mentioned in the Bible. Further, we find out that Zion in this psalm, as mentioned in different psalms, such as Psalms 87 or 42 or even other psalms, Zion in this case most definitely refers to Jerusalem, based on the name of Mount Zion, where the fortress of Jerusalem was, which David conquered, according to the biblical narrative, whereby Zion then became the center, the seat of Israel, the heart of the land of God, who is also described in Psalms 84 as the Lord of armies, where, and Zion is the heart, the seat of the house of God, where his people and even the animals dwell. So,
Just to add to this important point that you mentioned, it's interesting that when Muhammad claimed about the Isra and Mi'raj, the journey, first of all, from Mecca to Jerusalem and then the ascension, notice how he did it. He had to go to Jerusalem, not doing it from Mecca. Why didn't he ascend from Mecca, for instance? Well, because up until that time, he was trying to still please the Jews according to the traditional narrative. It was after this event that somehow Allah decided to change the direction of Qibla. Obviously, that's what the Quran says. The Quran even is silent, telling us which direction they used to pray towards and which new direction they're praying for, also towards now. We're just assuming it was Jerusalem and now it's Mecca, but it's silent when it comes to the Quran about those particular names.
Absolutely right. According to the narrative, Muhammad flies on his flying horse, donkey, to Jerusalem, to the temple in Jerusalem, and then ascends from there to heaven. So that place is so significant. Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with Kaaba, with Mecca, which later came into the picture as the center of Islam. There is one more thing which needs to be pointed out, which is something that Muslims appeal to within the Bible, known as the Desert of Paran. And Muslim apologists try to say that this refers to Arabia or to Mecca, and they try to say, therefore, Mecca is mentioned in the Bible. But again, this is a very strange objection, because the Desert of Paran merely happens to be a place that is mentioned in the Bible because it plays some significance, because it is a place that people rest and that people pass through, not a place where people go to the center of worship. It is mentioned in Genesis. It is mentioned in Exodus and Deuteronomy as a place where the people of Moses rest and build their tents before they move on. It is mentioned as a place that is close to Egypt. It is mentioned as a place that people pass through when they go from Edom, which is right there in the region, in Israel, to Egypt. So that is very clear in the biblical context that during a war, the Edomites flee from Edom to the desert of Paran, and then from there to Egypt. And it's very unreasonable to assume that the desert of Paran would then be referring to the southern Arabian regions of the Hijaz and around Mecca. It is merely a place that, looking at all the names mentioned together with Paran, are up there, right next to Jerusalem and the Holy Lands and all that. Mount Seir is there, Kadesh is there. These are all names: Laban, Topel, Hazaroth, Dizahab, all places that are associated with that region, mentioned together with Paran. So again, as we can see, there is no connection, there is no place that Kaaba has within biblical scripture, within biblical tradition. Even if the Kaaba was mentioned, or even if Mecca was mentioned as a place that appears somewhere within these books, that wouldn't even be significant, but not even that happens. We would expect that this is a center of worship because it matters to Abraham, because that's what Allah, what God makes Abraham do. And we would expect that the Jews and the Christians would care about this place, would have a connection to this place, right. But evidently we see that they have no connection to this at all. And if we figure out in the end that the Kaaba does not play a significant role in Abrahamic religion, that the Kaaba does not fit into monotheistic Abrahamic religion, then we will find out that the Islamic claims about the Kaaba are false, and that the Kaaba is merely a pagan adoption into Islam, which is a very, very strong argument to render Islam false.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. Absolutely. I mean, these are excellent points, very strong points. From a historical standpoint, we have enough archaeological evidence to support the prominence of the Holy Land, of Jerusalem, and the area in general. All of these archaeological discoveries are concentrated there. There is, every day, it's almost like there is something new that is being discovered that either connects the Christianity to the Holy Land, or the Jewish traditions to the Holy Land, or some of the stories in the Old Testament to the Holy Land, and many other discoveries. How come we can't find a single thing that ties Abraham to Mecca? Why did Abraham even choose to go back to the Holy Land and get buried there? Or he buried his wife? I mean, why? I mean, if Mecca was such an important thing for him, why didn't he stay there, for instance? I mean, these are the kind of questions we need to ask our Muslim friends, and that's why AP is raising him up and why I am commenting on him, because we want you, my friend, our Muslim friends, to ask yourself these questions. It's one thing to hearsay things, it's another to verify them. So I like what one of the U.S. presidents, his name is Ronald Reagan, says: trust but verify. So it's okay to trust whatever you're being told. Go and verify it yourself. It's a true statement. I mean, it applies to anything in life. I mean, anyone can tell you anything. That doesn't mean it's true, by the way. It is only true when facts support it. You can believe in something, but your belief is futile unless facts support that particular belief. We can say Mecca is prominent. My goodness, I can say my town where I'm living is prominent. I mean, so what? That doesn't mean anything. Then I have to prove it now. The onus, the burden is on me to have to prove why I am making such claims. In this case, AP, we're talking about allegedly a deity, God, the God of the universe, who allegedly claims that this city was prominence and that Abraham is connected to it, that the rituals are connected to the Abrahamic religion, that he sent his final prophet from that lineage and so on and so forth. Yet somehow this God elected not to provide a single evidence to prove this. And yet if he is truly the God of the Bible, how come he provided us with rich evidence when it comes to the biblical land, the Holy Land, and anything else that is mentioned in it? So these are the logical questions that I'm hoping our Muslim friends will ask. Final words to you,
Absolutely.
AP.
I want to add one thing to end this, which is the significance that Mecca and Kaaba play in Islam cannot be possibly overstated. It is a place of great significance. It matters to the core of Islam. It would be absurd to say Islam is true based on different reasons, which is why we will accept its narrative about the Kaaba as true as well, unless it is completely proven wrong by some very significant evidence. You can't do that. It is absurd to go that way. If Islam seems to make certain claims that are that very much seem false, then you should take those into consideration without thinking, well, but Islam is true from different aspects, which is why this must also be true, or which is why I cannot discount Islam based on this. Finally, we are not making an argument, or at least I am not making an argument from ignorance or from silence. This is not what this is. What we are doing is we are applying some abductive reasoning and saying, hey, if the Islamic narrative about the Kaaba and about Mecca were true, then Mecca would be found in historical sources. We would find archaeological, anthropological evidence. It would matter to the Abraham of the Bible. It would matter to Abrahamic religion, but it doesn't, and it doesn't. Therefore, the most reasonable explanation is that the Islamic claims are false. This is a very reasonable way to make the point. And I hope this clarifies the situation. Stay away from Islam, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, AP, as always. And I'm sorry that we have to just use a shorter version of this particular series. I know you are doing a lot of research on that. So I'm suggesting that next time maybe we'll continue to unpack this among many other topics that we would love to have you share with us. And everyone,
Definitely.
I hope you've been enjoying this. Feel free to, of course, share it with others within your network. Make sure you subscribe to AP's channel. Again, what is your channel called? The Apostate Prophet?
Yeah, Apostate Prophet.
Apostate Prophet. Subscribe to his channel. Be sure to allow people, make people, I should say, be aware of his channel. If you feel also compelled to subscribe to ours, Sira International, we thank you for that. And we ask, of course, for your support. Both of us have Patreon accounts. We would much appreciate, any of your support, of course, because believe it or not, this is what we do for a living. We do not have other job. We don't even have an 8-to-5 job, actually. We work 24/7. Sometimes I do things in midnight, and I know AP does the same. So all that to say is we're thankful for your support, thankful for your partnership with us, and be sure you spread the word. And as AP will say, run away from Islam. And as I would say, come to Jesus. With that in mind, thank you, AP. Thank you, everyone. Blessings, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel Sira International and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.